us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Come on up.
I would like to take just a brief moment for us to think about, we've been in the longest period of war in U.S. history. We have men and women, boots on the ground in harm's way at this very moment. We have Gold Star families that are suffering their losses. We have Blue Star families that are waiting for their loved ones to come home. Remember them. Thank you. For those of you that are willing, please stand. Place your hand over your heart. For those of you that feel like taking a knee, feel free. You will not offend this veteran. Veterans, present arms. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order, arms. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe and Scott. All right, well, I'm Rob Hogg, State Senator here, and thank you all for coming for tonight's special program with our special guest, who I'm going to introduce just momentarily. But first, I want to introduce really one of the stars of all the campaign staff. I know I helped clean up Indian Creek with her on a neighborhood cleanup. She cleaned up one of our local schools. She's been very active helping feed Iowa First. Those are on her days off. Senator, those are on her days off. She's been the Dean of Friendship 2020, Miranda Saley.
So, I'm going to ask everybody to, first of all, take out your phones and think about something that you are grateful for today. I'll tell you why at the end of my little spiel. But if you could, take your phones out and get ready for that. So, first of all, I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Miranda Saley. I am very honored to be Cory's organizer here in Cedar Rapids. This has very quickly become a second home for me, and so many people in this room are my family here, so thank God for that. I want to thank Senator Hogg for creating the space for us to be able to have a conversation about climate, and for y'all to join us to make that a possibility. So if we could just give everybody a round of applause for being here. That are here in the room on staff. So if you look around, some of us are in the back. If you want to sign a commit to caucus card or to hear more information about Senator Booker, we would love to get your information. So find it at the end. So really briefly, I'm just going to share a few things about my life experiences that led me to work for this guy right here. When my dad passed away, I was 16 years old, and my mom took over our family business and our family farm. And I watched her do the job of two people for a decade. She worked morning and nights, and it still didn't make a difference. We were still living underneath the poverty. And this isn't to say that she did not do her absolute best. She was a widow, she was a business owner, she was a single mother. But it is to say that our system is broken, and her working 15-hour days led to emotional distance between us. It led to a fierce independence by me at a really early age that I know that we can protect our babies from, and that I think they deserve to be protected from. If Cory's baby bonds, or even the RISE credit, would have been around whenever I was a child, it would have drastically changed my life. It would have changed my mom's life. I want that for our single parents, for our grandparents who are raising babies, and for all of our children, regardless of socioeconomics, race, anything like that. And I really do believe that Cory is the guy that can take all of those unique struggles that we all have individually, bring them together, and lead us to make those changes that our nation really needs. These aren't problems that are not solvable. They are solvable, and I think that he's the guy that's going to get us there. So, yeah, ready? selfie with the person that you're with, and take a picture of these handsome gentlemen right here. And whenever you share that, if you could include that thing that you're grateful for. So I'm a firm believer in what you appreciates, and we want to have more of these kind of conversations and to be in the room with like-minded people. So, yeah, I see some really beautiful smiling faces. Share those photos. Use hashtag Vote Climate, hashtag Sunrise Movement. Yeah, Hope High Hustle, all of that. So let's get excited for these guys. Thank you so much for being here.
Some of the elected officials and candidates who are here, so please stand and be recognized as I call on you. First of all the way from Davenport, Monica Kerr. Our very own State Representative Art Stade. City Council Member Dale Todd. Where are you, Dale? Van Orney, thank you, Ashley. And I want to recognize our Lynn County Democratic Chair, Brett Nellis. I want to start by recognizing she's on the ballot next month, Cindy Garlock for Cedar Rapids. Christian Andrews for State Representative. Some other towns. Running for State Representative, Eric Jardy in Hiawatha County. Just in the door, Lynn County Supervisor Stacy Walker. Now, I want to thank Matthew 25 for hosting this. Aaron Saylor, where are you, Aaron? Thank you for the arrangements, Aaron. How many of you, the first time you've been here at Matthew 25? Show of hands. All right, well, come down here. It's got the Groundswell Cafe, a Pay It Forward Cafe that serves locally produced food next door, and really encourage you to get down here and utilize the Matthew 25 cafe. And also, if you're looking for a space for an event, here it is. So it's an awesome co-working space. Our special guest and I just had the opportunity to tour the Matthew 25 Urban Farm over in the Time Check neighborhood, part of the revitalization and recovery of our city after the floods of 2008. And this is something that our special guest knows something about. He served on the Newark City Council, served as the mayor of Newark from 2006 to 2013, won a special election for the United States Senate in 2013, currently serves as the United States Senator for New Jersey, a lifetime League of Conservation voters rating of 99%.
Growing on that wall, let us begin. So sorry, I can't help myself. Would you give it up for the senator, please? Give us a round. So, we're going to have a great conversation, I hope, about climate, get into the gritty details, or anything you want to talk about, but I want to let you all know something. Behind every policy issue, every challenge, from World War II to beating the Russians after they put Sputnik up, all of the times that this country's had its back against the wall, from Pearl Harbor to 9/11, there's something underneath this ability of this country to rise to every challenge. The planet has been in peril before, whether it's a scourge of Nazism, whether it is the horrors of human slavery. This country has done things to lead before her. And fundamental underneath all of those things that make it possible for us to do the impossible has been a common virtue. Now, some people may call that patriotism, but it's deeper than that. I say that patriotism means love of country. But you cannot love your country unless you love your fellow countrymen and women. So, love is not sentimentality. It is not weak. It is not anemic. Love is sacrifice. Love is struggle. Love is service. Love says that your children and my children share a common destiny, and if your kids don't have health care or public education or food on their table, it is a moral assault on my children. My father was born in the segregated South. He was born poor, and if he was here right now, he would heckle me and say, "Boy, don't you tell those people from Iowa I was poor. Tell them the truth. I was just Po, P-O. I couldn't afford the other two letters. I was just a Po boy from North Carolina." And my father's story is a testimony to patriotism, a testimony to love. I call it a conspiracy of love. Because when his parents, his mama couldn't take care of him, he was born to a single mother, his grandmother took care of him, when she couldn't take care of him, a town stepped in. Wouldn't let one child fall behind the cracks. This family took him in as their own. They owned a funeral home in town, and they raised him up when my father didn't even have college in his mind. It was a community that said, if you see a child the way that he is, that's all there ever amount to. But if you see a child the way he could be and should be, he'll forever rise to that estimation. And they told my dad, "You're going to college." And when he started getting his dreams set on that, he realized he couldn't afford it. And then it was a church collection. This is back when you could afford tuition and put tuition in a collection plate. But they gave him enough money to go down the hill and enroll in a historically black college, an HBCU called North Carolina Central University. And at college, my father witnessed that conspiracy of love again, because it was the height of segregation, the height of the civil rights movement. He saw black folks and white folks, Christians, Jews, people from all backgrounds marching for his rights, sitting in for his rights. And next thing you know, he graduates from college, moves to Washington, D.C., and becomes IBM's first black salesman to be hired because people advocated for him, opened up doors. And you level a playing field and you give people a chance to succeed. And well, he did incredibly well. He was one of IBM's top 5% of their global salespeople, gets a promotion up to New York City, goes to look for housing around the suburbs of New York City, this great place, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, it's called New Jersey. And when he's looking for homes, every time he shows up at the place with the best public schools, he gets told that the houses are sold already. Oh, the real estate agent would see the black family and say, "You can't move here." And my dad was distressed, my mom was distressed. What did they find? The conspiracy of love. A group of people, mostly white folks, who met in the living room and said, "We are patriots." And they rose to the challenge. They would send my dad out to look for homes, and then they would be told it was sold, and they would send the white couple right behind them. And the white couple would find out the house was still for sale. In the house I grew up in, the white couple found out that the house was told to be sold to my dad, and the white couple found it was still for sale. They put a bid on the house, the bid was accepted, papers were drawn up, and on the day of the closing, the white couple didn't show up to the real estate agent's office. My father did, and a volunteer lawyer, a patriot, a part of that conspiracy. And when they confronted the real estate agent, he didn't give up. He gets up and punches my dad's lawyer in the face. He's so angry. Sings a dog on my dad. And as I was growing up in this great community, every time my dad would tell this story, the dog would get bigger. Eventually he's like, "Son, I had to fight a pack of wolves to get you in this house. You better appreciate what you have." The story of this nation is not the challenges we faced. It's not the bigotry or hatred or demagoguery. The story of this nation is that in every generation we have risen up together, bound together, not by race or religion or ethnicity, but bound by virtue. that this could be the country where people from all over the planet would come and elevate the highest of human aspiration. I stand here right now as a physical manifestation of a conspiracy of love, and that's why you're here as well. And so I say all this to introduce climate change because I'll tell you what, the thing that's going to stop us from meeting this challenge isn't based on the policy ideas of about 1,200 candidates running for president of the United States. It's not, I'm sorry, that's not the obstacle. It's not who has a better 15-point policy plan. What will stop us is the inability for us to ignite in this nation a sense of common cause, a sense of common purpose, like we've done in generations past. You have two veterans standing up here talking about us being at war. Well, my grandparents' generation, my grandmother, born and raised Iowan, my grandfather from Louisiana, when they met and married, moved to Detroit during the war, my grandfather worked at a UAW job building bombers, Bull Run Bomber Factory. They talked about that war proudly. They weren't on the front lines, but everybody was a part of that war effort. There were victory gardens. There were rationing. There were war bonds. This whole country mobilized. If we're going to meet this climate challenge, that's the spirit we need. It will take that level of mobilization where everyone is doing their part. And so you want to know why I'm running for president? It's because I want to meet the challenges other people said couldn't be met. And I got a pretty good track record. That's why I got some swagger right here. Because I moved to the toughest inner city neighborhood in America. A place called Newark, New Jersey that was left for dead by people who looked down on my city, didn't believe anything good could come from my city. We had 60 years of population decline, of our tax base declining. And we came in that city and said, together we will rise. We will show people what will happen. When we create uncommon coalitions, we're going to produce uncommon results. We're going to challenge this nation to pay attention because the American dream can thrive here. And we took on challenges from a school system under state takeover, now the #1 school system in America for beat the odds schools, high poverty to high performance. We took a city that had a housing crisis in the middle of a national housing crisis and doubled the production of affordable housing. We had food deserts where there hadn't been new supermarkets in decades, and just like this community, we built entire city blocks became urban farms. We created multiplier effect of benefit. We had men and women coming home from prison for nonviolent drug crimes, and we gave them jobs farming, not in the Midwest, I'm talking about the Northeast, in an inner city. We let those farms produce food and education classes for our schools. Because we found out that if kids are growing kale, they eat kale. We saw we had health challenges because people didn't have access to healthy food. As one of my friends, a guy I admire in South Central Los Angeles, he goes, in South Central we have drive-bys and drive-thrus, and the drive-thrus are killing more people than the drive-bys. We took a city that was looked down upon, and now it's the fastest growing period we've had in 60 years. Our population is growing, people moving back in. I went to the Senate and saw that same spirit of people saying things couldn't get done. I went there campaigning on an issue that wasn't popular, but life is not about popularity, it's about purpose. And when I swear that oath and I say liberty and justice for all, I can't sit still when I see a criminal justice system in America that treats you better if you're rich and guilty than if you're poor and innocent. So Mr. Booker went to Washington. And I tell you, I remember the heart sinking. My heart was sinking when I sat on the floor and I heard a guy from Iowa named Chuck Grassley preaching against the very criminal justice reform that I wanted to get done. I knew I had a hill to climb, but I didn't give up. We started doing the work, and in a matter of a few years, Chuck Grassley was working with us on bills to liberate people from prison. And now the only major bipartisan bill to pass underneath this president is a criminal justice reform bill that I led from the Democratic side of the United States Senate. So, I want to answer all your questions about my plans, but I want to end with this. I want to end with a warning. I'm the only presidential candidate you might ever hear to put a warning label on their presidency. If you elect me your president, hold on, because I'm going to ask more from you than any president has ever asked in your lifetime. Because this problem will not be solved from Washington. Oh yeah, I'm going to bring some legislation. I'm going to do some executive actions and we can talk about them. But I know my history. I know our history. I know our story. I know who we are. We are a people that has understood how change is really made. It wasn't a bunch of guys in 1920 on the Senate floor that got together and said, hey fellas, let's give women the right to vote. Ready? Break. No. No. It happened in communities like this. From women's rights to LGBTQ rights, Iowa didn't wait for Washington. You all stood up. You all fought for it. This is how change happened. You all know it wasn't Strom Thurmond that came to the Senate floor one day and said, I've seen the light. I think those Negro people should have some rights. No! He was filibustering, the longest filibuster in Senate history. How did we overcome it? Did we change filibuster rules? No. We brought the change. This state led that way. There were sit-in movements in this state before in Greensboro, North Carolina, where people say it started. This is how change is made. From individual Americans, and if I'm your president, I'm going to demand it. I'm going to demand that we raise the consciousness of this country like those activists who took down Bull Connor, not by fighting him as on his terms. That's not how we win. Don't let Donald Trump make you Trumpy. I've seen it. I had a guy right here in Iowa. I'm running for a stage. I'm about to get on the stage. He stops me. He's a big dude. I'm a big dude. He sees me and he goes, I'm a former tight end from Stanford, former All-American football player. The older I get, the better I was, people. And this guy says to me, dude, I want you to punch Donald Trump in the face. And I don't miss a beat. And I go, dude, that's a felony. Us black guys, we don't get away with those. No, we said, we cannot be like him. You're not defined by what happens to you. We beat Bull Connor not by bringing bigger dogs and bigger fire hoses. We beat Bull Connor by artists of activism who awoke in the moral imagination of this country, who called to the consciousness of the nation. One thing different about my climate plan is one of my major pillars is about environmental injustice. I came to this issue as a guy from an inner city where my children and parents don't trust the water coming out of their faucet because it's contaminated. Where there's Superfund sites, which exist in every state, but I live a mile from them, and we know from longitudinal data that children born around Superfund sites have significantly higher rates of autism and birth defects. That urban garden I told you about, that urban farm, the state environmental protection agency wouldn't let us plant in the soil because the soil was contaminated. Everything is in planter boxes. They won't let us eat the vegetables coming out of the ground in many of our neighborhoods. The river, the Passaic River that runs through my city, is contaminated because corporations just took their Agent Orange and dumped it into the river, stealing from future generations to pad their profits in the present. And now people that used to go down poor and be able to fish for their food can't eat what comes out of our river. Asthma rates in Newark are 3-4 times higher than in the suburbs because we're a heat island, and when temperatures rise as they are, it means death. Black children are 10 times more likely to die from asthma complications than a white child with asthma. You want to know why I'm an environmental activist? It's because climate change isn't a future thing for my city and my community. People are vulnerable today. And so I want to end with this. I went back to find those people that helped my family move into a town. It's white couples who were volunteering, the lawyers that organized it, the guy that took a punch from my family, and I found the lawyer. He was a retired judge, 84 years old, and he confirmed the story, and even the size of the dog, it was not a pack of wolves. And when I say I'm going to ask more from you, I want you to keep this guy in mind. Because I asked him why. Why would he go so far to help black families moving into his neighborhood? And he goes, well, I remember the moment I made the decision. And I go, you remember the moment? What was the moment? He said it was March 7th, 1965. I'm like, that's awfully specific. Well, he goes, on March 7th, 1965, he was sitting at home watching TV. Most of America was watching what he was watching. This is back when we had 3 channels, everybody. And most of America was watching a movie, Judgment at Nuremberg. You all know the movie. And when this was airing on TV on this historic day, March 7th, 1965, people who were watching TV that night, something really awful happened. They broke away from an ongoing movie to show a bridge in Alabama called the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And these marchers had started in Selma, trying to march to Montgomery, and they get stopped on that bridge by Alabama state troopers who would not let them pass. And then they shot tear gas at the marchers and stormed in with billy clubs and started viciously beating them over the head. What does a guy, a white guy on a couch 1,000 miles away in New Jersey do in this moral moment in his country? Does he say, wow, somebody down there in Alabama should do something about this? No. Does he allow his inability to do everything to undermine his determination to do something? No. He remembers the call of his country, of what patriotism is. It is love. People now say, oh, we're a nation of tolerance, as if that's something to be proud of. I tolerated a cold I had the other day. Tolerance crosses the street, love confronts and embraces. Tolerance builds walls, love tears them down. Tolerance says somebody should do something about it. Love stands up, and that's what he did. He stood up. He said, I gotta go to Alabama. And then he realized he couldn't afford a plane ticket to Alabama. So he does what is a great American tradition. He decides to do the best he can with what he has where he is. And he calls around to see who needs some help, and he finds this group of activists who are desperate for some lawyers helping families move into their community, black families, and 65 turns to 66, to 67, to 68, to 69. They have a whole good sting operation going, a conspiracy of love, and then he says he remembers the day that he gets handed to him a case file of a family trying to move up from the South. And the 2 names on the case file, he told me, were Carrie and Carolyn Booker, my parents. I stand before you right now as a United States Senator, a candidate for president, the 4th black person ever elected to the Senate. I stand here right now because one American on a couch didn't just sit there, they got up. We are a nation that is here because Americans stood for us. They fought for us. They gave their lives on beaches of Normandy for us. And now our challenge of this generation, the existential threat to the lives and the liberties and the existence of this planet is climate change. And if I'm your president, I'm going to bring everything I have. But one person, no matter what their office, is not enough. I'm going to mobilize this country and all of our grit and our determination like past presidents did. From Lincoln to FDR, this is our generation's challenge. And we're not going to just solve it with the ideas of our head. We're going to solve it with our heart and with our gut and with our spirit. And if we do that, this nation will not perish from the earth. We will rise.
fantastic. Thank you, Senator Booker. It's great to have you here in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and bring that message, and very grateful for it. One of the things I know about you is that you were the mayor of Newark, New Jersey, when we had our flood in 2008 here. You had a little thing called Superstorm Sandy. And I'd like to hear a little bit about what that meant to you as the mayor of Newark, and what your thoughts are about how we're going to pull Americans together to safeguard our people and our property from future disasters, and to make sure when disasters hit, we help people recover. So what are your thoughts on that experience?
So we're here in an organization called Matthew 25, and as a Christian who, I want you all to know, it gave me chills when I heard the name of your organization, because this is a Bible verse that in many ways most defines my life choices. I live as the only senator in a neighborhood below the poverty line because of Matthew 25. I focus so much on what happens to people in prison because of Matthew 25. And what's amazing to me about this nation, you see the best of us during the worst of times. And the stories about how this community pulled together during your great flood, it reminds me of what happened during Hurricane Sandy, where I saw, and again, as a person who's oriented by my faith, I just saw the spirit of divinity emanating from the hearts and the actions of my neighbors. God, I remember this amazing moment in my life where I'm in my command vehicle and I'm patrolling my city. I could do it. I had all my phones and walkie-talkies, and it was it was the middle of a storm, and I was looking for people that might be in distress, and I'm coming up a hill, and as I'm driving up this long hill in Newark, I get a call from the governor. And I don't care, Republican, Democrat, Chris Christie and I, we were brothers in the fight then, and he was checking in on me, and I was giving him all the reports and the data I had. I hang out with him, and I'm not exaggerating. The next call I get was from Barack Obama. And I'm now, the president and I are talking again. He was my friend before my president. He was my president. We're just two guys reporting in on each other, talking about things going. The wind is whipping my car so hard, it's hard to stay on the road. I hang up with him. I get to the summit of the hill, and I see an elderly man over 70 years old standing in a rain slicker in the middle of the street. There are down power lines, and he's waving at my car with the trees that hold it down. And we put on the lights and sirens to let them know we're police, or at least I'm being driven around by police. And I roll down the window and I say, "Sir, you need to get in." He goes, "No, these are live power lines, and I'm not going to let some car or somebody come along and hit them." I just talked to the governor of my state, and I talked to the president of the United States, and in a moment, I'm the mayor of the city. This guy in a street, an elderly man, was going to protect his community from down power lines. He showed me that it does not matter your title in life. Life is not about position, it's about purpose. And that's what I found out when I was mayor, is how strong and resilient and determined the power we have. And so this is what I'm going to say. As now as an executive, I learned it is better to be prepared for a crisis and not have one than have a crisis and not be prepared. And we have a lot of work to do to invest in resiliency in this country. Because I hate to tell you, even if we did everything right now, that we're still going to see weather events in this country that are going to be horrific, and we need to be doing more to protect and prepare for that. And the best way to do that is to have courageous citizens who are willing to say, "Hey, you know what? Our tax dollars, we need to invest in the Army Corps of Engineering. We need to rebuild levees and burns, and we need to invest in our communities and our neighborhoods." And that's why a big part of my efforts is to make sure that we are better prepared for weather emergencies when they happen.
Very good. Questions from the audience, but before I do that, I just want to say the thing I remember so vividly about the flood of 2008 is when we had lost 3 of our 4 water intakes, and the call went out for people to go sandbag to protect the 4th water intake. So many people showed up, and then the word went out, we need to secure the bottom level of Mercy Medical Center, the hospital here. Not that it wasn't going to flood, and they evacuated everybody at like 1 a.m. in the morning, but hundreds, thousands of people went to Mercy to make sure that that first level wouldn't collapse with the weight of all the water. I was down there with my state representative at the time, Tyler Olson, and then I'm leaving 3 in the morning, they ended, and they say leaving, some guy looks at me and says, I didn't know this guy, he just says, that's the most fun I've had in a long time. And I share that because since that time, I've called it the spirit of the sandbag. People want to participate, they want to help. Okay, let's see if we have some questions here. Let's start right here with this gentleman, Charles.
Yes, Senator Booker, thank you for being a vegan.
Yes, sir.
And I thought it was very humble that you didn't say anything about that in your entire speech.
You know the joke that says, how do you know somebody's a vegan? Don't worry, they'll tell you. I did not, no.
Okay. But what I would like to know is how that fits what people put in their mouth plays into the larger environmental plan that you would have for the United States.
I love that. I love that. So I believe in a free country. Do what you want, but I also believe in the goodness of Americans. And the more conscious consumers we are, the more we're going to make better decisions. And so I know I'm not 100% aligned with my values and what I do with my purchasing power. I tell people I'm trying to be more conscious of where the clothes come from that I buy, because fast fashion is having a terrible impact on our environment, on workers and more. And so I just, in my whole life, personally, I'm just trying to align my personal choices with my values. And I admit, 1992 is when I became a vegetarian, and then it was just a competitive athlete. I was an athlete looking for the best diet, and if you look at everybody now, from the New England Patriots quarterback, who shall not be named, sorry, he's Voldemort to a Giants fan, but you see these elite athletes now shifting over to that diet for health reasons. But look, we have to confess that industrial factory farming is destroying our ecology. And the number one reason for deforestation going on right now is these massive factory farming. It is a powerful driver of injustice in our country. The hog farms, I've gone out to visit the massive corporate hog farms down in North Carolina, which are so different than your memories of pig farming in Iowa. This is these huge multinational corporations down there, thousands of pigs. They won't even let you see them. They have these massive CAFOs that they cover up because they don't want Americans to see what's really going on in there. And their feces go out into these massive lagoons, and I stood there and watched them spray the stuff raw onto fields. And I watched with other activists as the stuff on the field, some of it falls, but it mists into communities, and surprise, surprise, low-income communities. And I met with those activists who now have respiratory diseases. They can't open their windows, they can't run their air conditioning, their lakes, their streams are now polluted, their water wells is polluted, they're dying of cancers. It was one of the most painful meetings I've ever seen about the way we're doing these industries. So I'm telling you right now, I'm not going to be a government shouldn't tell you what to do with your diet, but if I'm your president, we're going to stop incentivizing through our tax dollars the kind of things that are destroying our economy. Secondarily, we're going to start including independent family farmers in the solutions that we need to soil conservation and practices, because if we empower farmers, they can lead us out of this crisis and not fall prey to what's happening with corporate consolidation in the agricultural industry that's actually hurting farmers and threatening that great farm heritage here in the Midwest.
Thank you, Senator. We've got a lot of people who have questions. We're going to go over here to the young lady with the Green New Deal shirt.
All right. Not just the Green New Deal shirt, the Green New Deal with the state of Iowa. And what's your name?
Isha.
Isha. Nice to meet you, Isha.
I'm a senior at Lindmore High School.
Oh my gosh, you're a high school senior?
Yes.
You know, the era of like a law student. Go ahead.
Okay, so my question was, how are you planning to work with conservatives who are currently in office to make the climate crisis a top priority?
Oh, God bless you, Isha. That's my forte. Seriously, is working across the aisle. And you know, there's a wonderful writer named Brene Brown who says you can't hate up close, so pull people in. When I got to the Senate, I decided to go out and ask all my Republican colleagues either to dinner or to come to their office to sit and talk with them. And this was not an easy thing. I mean, settling on a restaurant with Ted Cruz was very difficult. I mean, as was said, I'm a vegan and he's from Texas. But he and I have passed legislation about the recovery after major storms together. I go to Bible study in a Republican chairperson's office. I sat down with John McCain in one of the most beautiful meetings I've ever had and gotten things done with these folks. And so I want you to know that the first instinct I will always have is to try to build unorthodox coalitions. Remember, I had a Republican governor when I was mayor of the city of Newark. To get anything done just about, I had to figure out a working relationship with them. And this is why I caution us Democrats. I really want to caution us. We cannot define ourselves as a party by what we're against. We need to define ourselves by what we're for. And Democrats, don't ever let it become the highest aspiration of Democrats is to beat Republicans. No, it's not. The highest aspiration of Democrats has to be to unite Americans in common cause and common purpose. So I want you to know, Isha, that I have a proven track record of creating coalitions to get things done. And when I can't create coalitions, I have a proven track record of being a pretty ferocious and creative fighter. There is an Oscar-nominated film about me, interestingly titled Street Fight. And it's about how I beat the machine in Newark, New Jersey to ascend to the mayor's office. And so I fight creatively, though, and use unorthodox means. This president uses his platforms in unorthodox ways to divide, to demean, and to degrade. If you elect me, you're going to have the most creative president of your lifetime. He uses unorthodox means with which to heal, to mobilize, to unite people in common cause and common purpose. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Just a short aside, I love your drug policy stuff that you're on, but this is about...
Did you say the drug stuff that I'm on? Because I'm on
We can talk about that also.
I'm just teasing.
So thanks for that, but this is a climate change thing. So
Thank you. And your first name was Rick?
Rick Stewart, yeah, I live here in Cedar Rapids.
All right, Rick. And I see the libertarian. Are you a libertarian?
Yeah, I agree with half of everybody.
I have a lot of common cause with libertarians, so bring it. I'm excited about this question.
William Nordhaus won the Nobel Prize in Economics for his work on climate change, and basically says the first and most important thing that the federal government has to do, or the whole world has to do, is implement a carbon tax.
Yes.
Almost every economist in the world agrees somewhat with that. But the real question is, what do you do with the money? Because the government's going to have the money. And what's your answer?
So I love this because, by the way, the whole field of Democrats does not agree on this issue, which I find it stunning because, when I was mayor of the city of Newark, I used to say, in God we trust, but everybody else might need data. And the data is very clear. One of the best knobs you have is to make sure you price pollution. It is a free market idea that you should have the cost of a good fully representative of the costs it makes on society. And so for full cost accounting, you should be pricing the carbon. And by the way, we're all much more rational economic actors than we know. If you put price on carbon, you're going to lower the amount of carbon being produced. And so I have a very simple, strong belief on this. And there's legitimate arguments for other usage of that tax, like to invest it into strategies and this and that. I say no because, again, I'm a guy who lives in a community where people are below the poverty line. And if you put in costs to carbon, a lot of corporations are just going to try to pass off those costs to consumers. And I don't want to put people who are low-income, working-class Americans in a position where their costs are going up. So my plan says I'm going to return those to give supports to make sure that the lowest income people in America are not hurt by our efforts to move to a carbon-free economy.
August, did you have a question?
It was kind of already answered, but yeah.
August, you're a couple months too late for your question, sir. I would like to go to September. I think the dad jokes are just going to get worse as the night goes on.
I'm really into this idea that 90% of Iowa's land area is agricultural land, and 23 million of those acres are corn and soybeans. Are you going to take on the corn lobby? Right now I've got a bunch of vegetable-producing friends that are doing great things to feed our community while we're subsidizing corn. And corn just causes, it's Roundup ready, it causes cancer. And then also it's producing corn syrup, which is in just about everything, which is contributing to our obesity epidemic.
Sir, you are going to need, and I'm not exaggerating this, no more sophisticated leader on food system, the brokenness of our food system. All of these issues are interrelated. And look, when my kids go into bodegas and they find a Twinkie product cheaper than a tomato, we have a real problem. And because we pay twice for that. We're subsidizing certain crops, and then at the same time, we are then subsidizing the medical costs of the diabetes and other diseases that we're producing. So again, I have a philosophy about Iowa farmers, that they are not the problem, that they are the solution. And that literally, if we start working with Iowa farmers by creating economic incentives to get them to embrace and lead the change. And so we've already seen this with wind turbines. But my vision is this: we are going to do a massive investment in farm communities. This is why my plan, if you go online and read it, you'll see us investing in evidence-based programs that we know that have worked through the USDA. We're going to start to incentivize cover crops, things that pull carbon out of the air, but we're also going to incentivize, as you're looking, I can see you, August, you're already giving me that look, we're going to incentivize organics, we're going to incentivize vegetables, the kind of crops also that make us a much more healthier country, because right now we have a food system that is not built to create the kind of health and well-being that we need, and also to deal with the climate crisis. I'm going to make sure that we make the kind of investments that start moving us towards the kind of farming that is sustainable, that empowers well-being, that deals with everything from our health crises to our climate crisis.
There are a lot of questions. I think about three more, but let's try to go back here.
I'm a dog Clay. I am a member of the Black Caucus, and I appreciate your story telling how other people helped you to get where you're at today. But the question I have to ask you, many politicians talk about their policy, and I give you a sample. The water board in Des Moines had a lawsuit against the drainage district north of them. What the legislature did, they took and changed the law when they did the system. Well, that lawsuit went away. We have, if Ms. Oka correct me on that, we have a fund to take care of clean water, but the government has not signed it. How, as you as president, are going to convince local people to do what they're supposed to do? But how's your policy going to trickle down? And I know there's limitations to your power, but how are you going to get those things done?
You want to add a lead to that, just explain, so in other words, there's a fund that are available in your state that they're not.
Well, it's a little more complicated than that, but in 2010, the voters of Iowa created a natural resources and outdoor recreation trust fund that the legislature and the governor have never funded. On the lawsuit by the Des Moines Waterworks, there was actually legislation to change the way the waterworks is governed. That actually didn't pass, but the lawsuit also failed. So we've got a lot of political hurdles in Iowa, and I guess that if I can help translate Bernard's question, it's how do you work through the politics of these special interests that try to shoot down what we're trying to get done.
Yeah, look, there are a lot of levers the federal government has to push states into doing what's right, and I've crafted a lot of legislation. Like, for example, we're seeing a lot more people want to move towards marijuana legalization. I have the premier bill in the Senate, but I always tell people that don't talk to me about marijuana legalization unless in the same breath you're talking to me about expunging records of people. Push states to do that. It uses carrots and sticks. Threatens to withhold resources from states who do not move towards doing things that are about justice and restorative justice. And so I know what the challenge is. For example, I just passed legislation. Yes, actually, the last month I passed legislation to help get lead pipes to free up resources to get lead pipes out of the ground. But I can't force Iowa to do that. And that's why the second part of my answer is just blatantly political. Is if you elect me as your nominee, I am going to campaign for the presidency in Iowa. Even if my higher-ups say, why are you campaigning in Iowa? It's this swing state, this swing state. No. Because very important to our success in America is, number one, getting a new senator here in Iowa. again, is I came into Iowa before I even started my presidential campaign, raising money for state legislators. Because this can't be anymore about one office, one position. This is not an individual sport, democracy. We need to have a president and a leader of our party who understands that you build from the grassroots up. Because you're right, there's limitations. The attacks going on Medicaid in this state, the attacks going on teachers, public school teachers in this state, the right for people to organize and to collectively bargain in this state, all of these things, that we have to have a strong state party to fight back. And I'm going to be a president bringing resources and support to the kind of organizing that builds a Democratic Party from the grassroots up.
Senator Booker will have some time to visit with people one-on-one before he has to get out of here. But let's go here, and then we'll go over here to Councilmember Van Orny. So, right here.
Senator Booker, thank you for being here, and also thank you for visiting the border where the least among us, the children, are still incarcerated at the hands of our government.
Thank you.
Can you speak to the intersectionality of climate change and migration and what that does in ravaging communities across the world?
So you're too far away from me to hug you for that question. We'll get a hug later. That word intersectionality is I could literally go off on that. Just people don't understand. As King said, we're all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality tied in a common garment of destiny. You can't talk criminal justice reform without talking education, without talking healthcare, without talking the environment. All of these things are tied together, and the immigration crisis we see today is nothing like what's going to happen if we don't act. If you look at the military reports from our own country, what they anticipate just 20, 25 years from now, when I'm this president's age, we will be having a migration crisis on this famines and opportunities for extremists to exploit, to whip up terrorism. Our own military, because of what climate change will do to food sources and water sources, they're anticipating global crises of unimaginable consequences, destabilizations of entire countries. And so this is part of that urgency. And we already know that some of the migration crises, even the instability in the Middle East, has been caused by famines and crises that are there. So what you're saying right now is just another part of the chorus of alarm that should be going off about the urgency for us to act and to be proactive on this problem. Because again, if we don't deal with this injustice somewhere else, it will visit upon our borders in ways that people cannot fully grasp right now. I will deal with that sense of urgency every day as your president.
When Sandy hit, I put out an email update to my constituent list, like you might do, and said, hey, all these people came and helped us after the 2008 flood. Let's be sure that we help them. And I got an email back. Senator Hogg, thank you for your email. After the flood of 2008, when I lost my home, I moved to New Jersey. And I lost my home again. I seem to have bad luck with weather events. It was devastating. And this refugee issue is critical. We have to continue to help people. Yes. Let's go back here for the last question.
Ashley.
Here.
I'm not taking it easy on you.
Ashley texted me. She does not take it easy on me in her texts either. Go ahead.
So I come from 5 generations of farmers in Iowa, Democrats, mind you. And Secretary Vilsack was strategizing here last week at Iowa Ideas about how the United States has an opportunity to invest in zero-emissions farming. My family has historically been hog farmers and would love to do this, but it's currently a huge upstart cost and currently cost prohibitive. Iowa reportedly has more hogs than people. He spoke about being able to utilize waste from extracting ammonia for organic farming, creating profitable fertilizer pellets, and clean water. He mentioned that this would give us a competitive advantage in the international market. So you spoke about incentives earlier. How do you think that you could assist us with this?
Well, a number of ways. My plan, if you read through it, take the time, we really are talking about making significant investments, number one, in those kind of upgrades for farmers. But even more than that, the exciting thing is to invest in the research that makes 21st century farming even more possible. We want to have moonshots in every single state, funding our colleges and universities to do those kind of research and development. There are exciting things on the frontier of agricultural sciences, and it's actually, I love this, all life comes full circle, really looking back towards more sustainable farming practices of the past, but how we can use the wisdom of the present to help us to embrace the kind of changes we need. I really worry about our party, and we've made those mistakes before, losing farmers and coal miners and others. When we don't talk about a just transition. We need to make sure that everybody, whether they're people doing the noble work that my family did here in Iowa. My family in Iowa comes from Buxton. My grandmother's grandmother moved here to be a coal miner. It is a noble tradition. These are people that have been scraping from the earth their American dream and fueling the Industrial Revolution here. We can't turn our back on the past and make people feel like the Democratic Party doesn't have a vision that's inclusive. And so I'm one of those folks that's going to be talking a lot about that idea of a just transition. That you're going to see me campaigning, unlike in your past where coal miners were insulted. I'm going to embrace them and talk about how there's a pathway to the future and prosperity for their families, that like your family has been generational farmers, there's generational coal miners as well. We have got to stop vilifying people and start talking about how bringing this country together can get noble, glorious, innovative things done. And the way we do that, in the same way we put human beings on the moon by including black women, these hidden figures, working side by side with white male astronauts, this is how we get things done. And there's no way to go forward. Old African saying, some of you will know it. If you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, you must go together.